What if Trump came out and endorsed Jeremy Silverstein for county DA against Jose Garza? Now, I know that'd be weird because Jeremy is not a Republican, but he's a young, handsome guy. He didn't have, those big old thick glasses like Garza does. Would that help?
No.
What?
I don't think so.
Come on.
I think Michael put it in good terms and when he tweeted about it. I think that this race is currently one of the dumbest things I've ever seen in following politics. I mean, you have a guy who filed literally on the last day. Okay. He was recruited by Margaret Moore to file. I think he's a good lawyer. I've never met him. I've never talked to him, but he's competent. But he files the last day. Okay. He has no club endorsements. He has no elected endorsements. He is bankrolled in part by Republicans. And people are actually out there thinking like, oh, he might win this. He has no chance of winning this. And so Michael can speak to this more. I can't. I've had so many phone calls from people that are mostly Republican friends of mine of like, I think I'm going to support him. And I'm like, okay, but he's not going to win.
But
yeah.
And this is the Democratic primary, correct?
Yeah.
Well, I think this is what I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, Michael. I just want to throw this in there. You're seeing this a lot, though, and I actually read a tweet about this morning where in a lot of cities, and I think this was where I read it was LA, that Republicans are doing what kind of Democrats do in Republican primaries, which is kind of picking the lesser of two evils, donating to them, getting behind them. We did it here in the Houston mayor's race. I guess they're doing it in your DA race there. We're seeing it in LA now. So maybe that's the move for Republicans in major cities who can't win otherwise. But go ahead.
It's a different animal. You're talking a mayor's race, which is, in November, two Democrats against each other. This is a Democrat primary. You're talking to primary voters. These are the diehards. They're not, well, that's one issue, but no, I see everyone's talking about it. Everyone's sending me emails to donate. I get the same stuff. And I'm just like, I appreciate the desire to change things in Austin, but jumping into these elections that there's just no possibility of winning and spending a bunch of money, like go build something else with that money. Go do something else with that money that's more productive than like spending a bunch of money on this guy that has no shot.
So let me ask. I mean, I think this is a good question for Adam and Michael, because there's a lot of people that believe. So we're talking about the Travis County DA race. We have Jose Garza. He's one of the Soros-backed DAs. We get it. It's awful. He's terrible. His policies suck. We all know that, right? But it's not a secret that his policies suck. Maybe people aren't paying attention. Maybe people don't care. I think that's pretty likely that the average Austin Travis County voter just has no fucking clue about who the DA is or what he does or anything like that. Maybe, but we're talking about diehard primary voters, right? So they're maybe a little bit more tuned in. Should I be walking away from this with the assumption that they agree with these policies?
I think so. I mean, I think people don't appreciate how far left the Democratic Party has moved here on police issues. This wasn't the case 10 years ago and certainly not 20 years ago. But you have a group of an electorate that voted Garza in when he was expressly running and saying he's going to prosecute police. And I think your typical voter Democratic voter is very open to that. And so I think that they are not upset about those cases as much as, of course, the Republicans are and some on Twitter are. And so the question then for Jeremy is, how do you run against him? And he can't run from the left against him. So you kind of have to run from the right, but you can't be a law and order candidate in the Democratic primary. So I've heard people hear him talk on the stump, and it's like a very jumbled message because I think they don't quite know what to say.
Yeah. Here's a way I've tried to explain it to people to really simplify it for the way I see it. If your picture of a police officer in your mind is Derek Chauvin, you're going to want less of that. Right? Mm-hmm. So that's as simple as I can put it. What the effort should be not to elect a different person. The effort should be to change the picture in people's minds of what a police officer is. That's where your energy should be focused. And the police all these donors, they just throw money at a candidate and they've lost, I always say they've lost the culture on this issue. In Austin, as Adam says, people want and rightfully want reforms to police and the criminal justice system, and the who stopped that in a lot of cases has been police. And the picture of a police officer in their mind is this guy that's shooting the unarmed black man. So you have to change that dynamic in a cultural fight, not in an electoral fight, if you actually want to win on that issue.
Right.
So what do we do? We
well,
get
as someone
police
who's not enough.
white guys?
Hmm?
What do we do? Get police to shoot white guys?
It ain't gonna happen.
No.
What do you mean it's not gonna happen? They shoot white guys?
As someone who's not in Austin, I'm not fully understanding. When he ran, was it running on like targeting prosecuting police or like?
Yeah, he's a Soros guy. He was financed by Soros. So he's been smart in that he's not gotten the national pub that Chesa Bolden got or the guy in Philly got. He doesn't do a ton of media, but he's got the Soros network fully behind him, and so he got in office. He indicted a bunch of cops. Then he had to drop a bunch of indictments because he couldn't make the case. Okay. Complete embarrassment. But right now, he's liked. I mean, that's the problem. I mean, he's among Democrats, people like him. And so I just think the whole thing's half-baked that they're trying to do here.
Do you happen to know anything about the Harris County DA race? Because I'd love your take on that if you do.
Well, the only thing I know several things, but the one thing is the major donation is from a guy named Scott Freeman who gave $500,000 to the challenger.
Yeah, Chantier.
And so I know Scott really well, and Scott is a guy that does structured settlements, which is annuities and personal injury cases. He's not a lawyer. He just markets to it. So he knows a lot of very big dog lawyers. He's very close with a lot of big dog lawyers. Scott himself, in my personal opinion, is really not that political. So I'm very curious as to why he put $500,000 in this race. I don't believe it was just from him. I believe it was his money, of course, but there's something else going on there, which maybe you can tell me about, but I was amazed that he donated that kind of money.
Oh, that's interesting. I did not. I mean, I knew that he donated. I did not know who he was or where that really came from. So that's news to me. That's very interesting. I want to look into that one. Yeah, I mean, that race has been interesting so far. They had their first and I think only debate last night. Wasn't really anything to write home about. But it does seem as though Chantier has a lot of support because the progressives in Harris County don't like the DA because she's indicted Democrats. And so we'll see. I think it's going to be a tough race for her. I mean, it's a Democratic primary. She's indicted the staff of the very popular Democratic county judge. And so I don't know. We'll see what happens.
So do you think she's going to lose?
I think there's a very real risk of it. I don't know. I wouldn't, if the election were today, I'd probably still put money on her, but I do think there's a very real risk of it. She's losing a lot of the club endorsement, the Houston Black, I think it's the Houston Black American Democrats, the Houston GLBT caucus, the Tejano Democrats all endorsed her opponent. Like he's getting a lot of the endorsements. The county judges endorsed him. So he's got a large number of very big Houston Harris County endorsements. So I think it's a tough race for her, but